Imagine this, a political campaign with over $1 billion in donations, yet somehow the people who were supposed to champion progressive values ended up helping some of the very corporations they pledged to fight against. Sounds too crazy to be true, right? Well, Kamala Harris' 2020 campaign did exactly that. It raised a staggering $1.2 billion, and if you're wondering where all that money went, you're not alone. The funds were funneled through a network of consulting firms, some of which have surprisingly close ties to the very corporate giants Harris claimed to oppose. Here's where it gets interesting. Kamala Harris' campaign didn't just raise $1 billion, it spent that money on a series of companies that might just leave you scratching your head. At first glance, everything seemed aligned with her progressive message, fighting for affordable healthcare, tackling corporate greed, and improving the lives of working people. But what if I told you that some of the vendors she hired were actually linked to the very corporations she was supposed to oppose? Picture this, firms tied to Big Pharma, Wall Street, and other corporate powerhouses, each one pocketing millions of dollars from Harris' campaign. Sounds off, doesn't it? These are the same industries she spoke out against on the campaign trail, yet their representatives were the ones helping to craft the narrative and deliver the messages. Could it be that the campaign's true priorities weren't as progressive as we were led to believe? Imagine this. The campaign's messaging, the very heart of its appeal, might have been influenced by corporate interests with agendas that directly contradicted Harris' promises. What happens when those behind the scenes have more to gain from maintaining the status quo than pushing for change? That's the real twist in this story. Stay tuned, because what you're about to hear may just shock you. Let's dive into the first twist in this story. Kamala Harris' largest vendor by far was Media Buying and Analytics LLC. On paper, it sounds like a typical firm you'd hire to manage campaign ads and media placements. But here's where it gets tricky. Media Buying and Analytics LLC is actually a front for Canal Partners, a media firm with deep ties to corporate interests. So, what does Canal Partners do? Well, they are just making ads for a candidate running on a progressive platform. They've worked with some of the biggest corporate players, including Big Pharma and other industries that are directly opposed to the very policies Kamala Harris claimed to champion. One of their clients, for instance, is a pharmaceutical lobby group, which has spent millions fighting against policies that would lower drug prices, a cause that Harris herself has strongly supported. Now, you might be wondering, how could a campaign, especially one pushing for change, put so much trust and money into a vendor with such clear corporate ties? Well, that's the million-dollar question. If a campaign is hiring firms with deep connections to corporate giants, can it really remain true to its promises? How can you fight corporate greed while working with the very people who keep it alive? But here's the kicker. Canal Partners didn't just advise Harris' campaign. They were responsible for overseeing more than $280 million in ad production and placement. And that number was only expected to grow. Can you imagine? Hundreds of millions spent on ads crafted by people whose other clients are directly opposing the policies Harris was supposed to support. What happens when a campaign is funded by grassroots supporters, but the people behind the scenes are more concerned with their corporate clients than fulfilling those promises? Does it leave the campaign more susceptible to corporate influence than we'd like to believe? You might already have your suspicions, but the truth is far more complicated than it appears. Stay with me. Let's shift focus to Tony West, a key figure in Kamala Harris' campaign who played a pivotal role in steering it away from its more populist messaging. Tony West is not just any advisor, he's Harris' brother-in-law, and his background adds another layer of complexity to this story. Before advising Harris, West served as Uber's legal officer, where he helped the company navigate legal challenges while defending its controversial business practices. His influence on Harris' campaign would prove just as significant, especially when it came to shaping the direction of her messaging. Imagine being told as a leader that your path to success lies in abandoning the very principles that got you this far. Principles meant to challenge corporate power and fight for everyday people. How would you react? Would you stay true to your values, or would you bend under the pressure of those with deep pockets and political power? The corporate ties behind Kamala Harris' campaign raise a larger question. Has the strategy of corporate-backed Democrats already been proven to fail? Let's take a step back and look at the broader picture, drawing comparisons to Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign. Clinton, too, relied on a network of powerful consultants, media firms, and financial backers from large corporations, and we all saw how that strategy unfolded. Despite raising millions and courting corporate donors, her message of progressivism clashed with the interests of those funding her campaign. In the end, it led to widespread distrust and voter disillusionment. Fast forward to Harris' 2020 campaign, and it seems history is repeating itself. Harris' campaign didn't just rely on media firms and consulting groups. It actively sought out companies like Gammon Strategies and Bully Pulpit Media, both of which have deep ties to some of the world's most powerful corporations. Gammon Strategies, for example, has worked with major clients like McDonald's, while Bully Pulpit Media counts JP Morgan and Boeing among its roster of corporate partners. If these same companies who stand to gain from the status quo were hired to help drive a progressive campaign, does that mean the progressive message was doomed from the start? Can you really challenge the system when your campaign is built by the very forces that profit from it? In the end, Kamala Harris' 2020 campaign offers a striking glimpse into the world of modern political fundraising, media buying, and corporate influence. The billion-dollar campaign, with its corporate connections, raises an uncomfortable question about the future of progressive politics in America. Can we trust campaigns funded by corporate dollars to truly fight for the changes we need? The answer might not be as clear-cut as we'd like. What happens when the people running the show aren't just in it for the cause, but for the profit they stand to make by preserving the status quo? And can we expect true change from a campaign that is so deeply tied to the same systems that many believe need to be reformed? The deeper you dig, the more complex the picture becomes. But one thing is clear: behind the polished speeches and the flashy ads, corporate influence has a hand in shaping the message. The truth, it seems, is more complicated than we might want to believe.